This segment deals with the amounts of money that we contribute to superannuation, along with how we need to capture and live within our budgets once we are in pension mode. I've titled it, Is 9% Enough? As you would recognise, 9% is the amount of compulsory contributions that employers make to superannuation funds. For most Australians, the only contributions being made into superannuation is the compulsory 9% from their employment. Will this be enough? Basically the answer, in short, is no, it will be insufficient. The primary pillar of contributions to a superannuation fund is generally the employer compulsory contribution, but depending upon how we live and other factors which I'll discuss later, it really won't be sufficient, especially if we live longer and we have a lot of medical expenses during our period of retirement. It will be sufficient for us if we've got other assets outside of superannuation. Many have done this because of the uncertainty of superannuation legislation in the past 10 years. They have built up investment reserves and assets outside of superannuation, and so between these and what's in their super will, in some instances, provide a very healthy retirement. But if all we have for our retirement is in superannuation and the only amount that's going into it is the 9%, then I fear that most of us will run out of money. As simple as that. The super guarantee, when it came in during the Hawke and Keating years, was never designed to be enough to provide to self-fund retirement. There's no one size that fits all ages. We all spend differently. We invest differently before retirement with different tolerances towards risk. Most especially in self-managed super funds, I see that in a varying degree, where some clients are very reserved and others are very flamboyant and entrepreneurial. Consequently, the outcome over a decade or two is vastly different depending upon the nature of our investments. Of course, we all don't die at the same time, so our longevity has a lot to do with what we have in the fund, and we all differ with our health spending, and that becomes a major impact, of course, as you know, once we start becoming a little bit more later in the sunset of our years. So how much is enough? Well, I guess that's entirely up to us and what we expect from our savings. If we have a desire to leave a nest egg for our kids, and whether or not the government can afford to supplement our else self-funded retirement with age pensions or completely fund us with an age pension should we run out. My concerns are that the government doesn't have the capacity in the long term to continue with age pensions. I think that's a really major problem that we've got now. And so obviously in the Henry report there was something in there with respect to this, increasing the 9% up to 12% over time, but 12% really isn't enough either, especially if we're over age 40. We really need to have a lot more in it than what's been put in by the employer. Another impact is that the cost of aged care ever increasing, and even bonds that you have to put into the aged care facility as a bond in order to stay there eats out a large chunk of our savings, and consequently there's less money there to be invested and consequently less to live on. And of course, if we're leaving out the major contributions we have in our lifetime to when we're getting towards the end of our working life, then there's not enough time for them to be in the fund to do what they should be doing in earning us compound returns. So what are some minor changes that we can make in order to have a major impact on our retirement? Well, I guess the first thing is to do some salary sacrifice into super. Even if it's in small amounts, $20 a week is $1,000 a year. So even if we do some salary sacrifice, rather than rolling over money out of our savings into super as a member contribution, those rollovers are done in after-tax dollars. It'd be better to have the salary sacrifice going in before tax dollars, and the super fund would be taxed at 15% on those contributions, which is the lowest of all the tax rates that we have. Of course, we can also do some member contributions that qualify for the government co-contribution. We can also roll over some of our assets that we may have outside of our super fund into the super fund so that they can be taxed at lower marginal rates. And when the super fund becomes a pension fund, the returns on those assets are totally tax-free. We can do some spousal contributions as well, and maybe roll over some of our savings into super when we're getting close to retirement. We don't want to be doing it too early because, as you know, once money goes into super, it's very hard to get it out unless you meet one of the criteria in order to exit money out of the fund. One of the major quandaries that I have with clients is that as soon as I see that they've paid off their house, they cease living on a budget, or as soon as their kids are finished and left the nest, they no longer live on a budget. They no longer put constraints on their spending, and their spending becomes flamboyant and willful, and there's nothing there. You know, what was usually being paid in a housing repayment should be directed again to something towards super or something else for our retirement, not just left in consolidated revenue in the household budget. We need to discern between our needs and our wants. That's a lifelong effort, and it differs between people, but it gets down to exercising self-control, and if we want to have a happy retirement, then we have to exercise self-control now as well as then when we're living on our retired savings. And also we need to put in place a process to avoid too much credit. The old adage of waiting a little while longer till you have the money to buy it, and of course when you buy it for cash you generally buy it for less. Interest spent is never returned. Interest never gets sick, doesn't go on holidays, never rests. Every night we go to bed, interest is being calculated when we sleep, and so interest saved is a major saving in our life. My wife and I have rarely paid any interest. We've tried to do wherever we can save before we buy. Of course, the exception was our house and big capital items, but wherever we could, we've saved, and accordingly, we have probably far more, and we would have far more had we bought and paid interest at the time. So how much do we need to retire on? Well, 15% contribution at an earnings rate of 5% over 25 years would be capable of paying around the average weekly earning on retirement. Maybe next time the Mr. Ed wants to pay us some money, instead of insulating our houses or burning them down, fixing toilet blocks at schools or whatever, he should put some more money into our superannuation policies and help us be more self-reliant. At the moment he's trying to put that money into our super fund by raising taxes on mining companies. Whether you agree or agree not with that, I'm sure we would all agree that it would have been money far better spent in stimulating the economy instead of putting insulation in our roofs, but spending money and putting money into our superannuation funds, or giving us the capacity to use those funds to extinguish debt. So let's look at the future and plan for it now. It's never too early or too late to get serious and to make a start. 9% is not enough for most of us, and we need to really plan. I'm surprised at how many people really don't plan 3 years, 5 years, 10 years in advance. It absolutely mystifies me how we can have such a short-term view on our life, and we are going to live longer. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a burden on my kids. I want to live independently and live comfortably in the sunset years of my life. Thank you.